All right, let's just jump right in. The year is 2025, and that long simmering shadow war between the United States and Iran, well, it's not in the shadows anymore. It has exploded into the open. And what we're seeing now is something way more direct and way more dangerous than a conflict fought with proxies and sanctions. And hey, don't take my word for it. That's a direct quote from Iran's own president, Masoud Pezeshkian, speaking in December of 2025. Think about that for a second. For the government in Tehran, this isn't just another conflict. This is an existential fight. It's a battle for their very survival, a world away from the calculated chess game they used to play. So the big question is, how on earth did it come to this? You'll hear analysts throw around this term, a warlike situation. And you might be wondering, what does that even mean? Well, it's not a war with a big formal declaration, like in the old movies. Nope, this is something different. It's a high-stakes, all-out conflict fought on every single front at the same time. We're talking military, economic, technological. It's bombs, it's banking sanctions, and it's cyber warfare, all hitting at once. This is the new battlefield. So, to really get a handle on why things are so incredibly tense in late 2025, we've got to rewind the clock. Let's go back just a few months to a very short but unbelievably devastating conflict that really set the stage for everything. We're going back to June 2025 and a military operation called Operation Midnight Hammer. The whole thing kicked off on June 13th. That's when Israel launched this huge surprise assault. Their reasoning? They said they had intelligence that Iran was making a mad dash for a nuclear weapon. Then, just 9 days later, the United States jumped into the conflict directly. And we're not talking about a small skirmish here. They launched their own major series of strikes, right onto Iranian soil. And wow, this operation was just an incredible display of American air power. It basically went down in two steps. First, you had the F-22s and F-35s, the best of the best, going in to punch a hole in Iran's air defenses. And you got to remember, those defenses were already reeling from the Israeli attacks. And once the coast was clear, then came the main show. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers. Get this, they flew a continuous 18-hour mission all the way from Missouri, delivered their bombs, and got out without anyone even knowing they were there. Just unbelievable. When the dust settled, the reports coming from the U.S. were just blunt. The language they used was stark. The Natanz facility, totally obliterated. The Isfahan facility, severe damage. And Fordo, that fortress buried deep under a mountain, even that took major damage. The bottom line here is just staggering. Iran's entire nuclear program, years and years of work, was essentially crippled in a matter of hours. And if you really want to understand the sheer force we're talking about here, just look at this one number, 14. That's how many of these monster GBU-57 bunker buster bombs were dropped on just one facility, Fordo. I mean, these things are literally designed to burrow through a mountain of reinforced concrete before they go off. The message couldn't have been any clearer. No matter how deep you dig, you are not safe. Okay, but this wasn't just about blowing up buildings. The real damage, the stuff that truly changed the game, went way deeper. You can think of the June war as delivering two knockout blows to the Iranian regime. First, a decapitation of its military command. And second, a geopolitical amputation that cut off its influence in the region. Let's break those down. So, decapitation. This was absolutely devastating. I mean, in one single strike on a command bunker, they took out the entire brain trust of Iran's military. You're talking about the top guys. Mohammad Bagheri, the chief strategist. Hossein Salami, the head of the powerful IRGC. And Amir Ali Hajizadeh. This was the guy who built their entire drone and missile program from the ground up. You just can't replace that kind of experience, that institutional memory. It's just gone. All right, now for the geopolitical amputation. For years, Iran had this crucial lifeline, right? A land bridge that ran through Syria, controlled by their ally, Assad. This bridge was how they funneled weapons and supplies to their number one proxy, Hezbollah, in Lebanon. But right before all this, in late 2024, Assad's regime collapsed. And just like that, the bridge was gone. The main artery was severed, so Iran's power in the region went from this solid, connected corridor to just a few scattered, isolated islands of influence. And the fallout from that was immediate. Hezbollah, suddenly cut off, is now facing strategic paralysis. They just can't get the advanced parts they need anymore. The Houthis in Yemen, yeah, they're still causing some trouble, but their strategic punch is just gone. So what's the big takeaway here? Iran's whole deterrence shield, its entire strategy of using other groups to fight its battles, it's been shattered. This completely changes their playbook and forces them onto the defensive. So with Iran's military on the ropes, the U.S. and its allies didn't let up. They opened a whole new front, economic warfare. They basically rolled out what everyone is calling maximum pressure 2.0. Then came the killer blow. In September 2025, the European powers pulled the trigger on the snapback provision from that old 2015 nuclear deal, and bam! This was a crushing move. Suddenly, every single UN sanction that had been lifted came roaring back into place. We're talking a total weapons embargo, new missile restrictions, a complete ban on uranium enrichment, and asset freezes on over 120 different groups, including their own central bank. They were effectively unplugged from the entire world economy, almost overnight. And at home, inside Iran, the impact has been an absolute catastrophe. You really only need to look at two numbers to see how bad it is. First, inflation is hovering around 40%. Just imagine that. Prices for everyday people are just spiraling out of control. And second, their oil, the main way they make money, well, now they're forced to sell it on the black market at a massive 20% discount. That just guts their national revenue. You know things are bad when the desperation reaches the very top. In this amazingly candid moment, Iran's own president, Pezeshkian, admitted that his government's spending was, and I'm quoting here, what crazy people do. I mean, wow. He's now urging citizens to cut back on energy use, and apparently he's even working by a single desk lamp himself to set an example for a nation that's literally facing rolling blackouts. Right. So it is so important to remember that none of this just appeared out of a vacuum. The crisis we're seeing in 2025, it's really the boiling point of more than 70 years of deep-seated animosity and mistrust. To really truly understand why things are so explosive right now, we have to take a quick step back and look at the history. You can trace the bad blood all the way back to 1953, with the CIA-backed coup. For many Iranians, that was the original sin. Then, of course, the 1979 Islamic Revolution and the hostage crisis, which completely shattered diplomatic ties. After that, you had decades of a tense Cold War that sometimes got very, very hot, like in 1988 with battles between the U.S. Navy and Iranian forces. We saw a glimmer of hope with the 2015 nuclear deal, but that didn't last. The U.S. pulled out in 2018, and then the assassination of General Soleimani in 2020 just poured gasoline on the fire, leading us right to where we are today. And that brings us right back to the precarious present of December 2025. You have an Iran that's been crippled, but is still absolutely defiant. And the whole world is basically just watching and waiting to see what happens next. Everyone is holding their breath for this high-stakes summit meeting that could kick off what people are already calling Phase 2 of this conflict. So on December 29th, U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are set to meet down in Florida. And let's be perfectly clear, this is not a peace conference. No way. The word from intelligence sources is that this is basically a war council. They're getting together to map out their strategy for 2026. And Israel is coming to that meeting with a very specific and very aggressive agenda. First, they want a green light from the U.S. for more preemptive strikes, this time targeting Iran's conventional missile facilities. Second, they want an ironclad promise that America will use all necessary means if Iran even gets close to 90% weapons-grade enrichment. And finally, they want to coordinate their efforts to finish off what's left of Iran's proxy network. So here's where we're at. It's an incredibly dangerous standoff. On one side, you have Iran backed into a corner and in a state of survivalist desperation. On the other, you have the U.S. and Israel actively planning their next military move. The window for any kind of diplomacy, any kind of new agreement, is slamming shut. And that leaves all of us with one final, very unsettling question. Is a second, even more intense and potentially wider conflict now just inevitable?